And welcome into the locker room this week. All kinds of great stuff to talk about, so we're going to jump right into it now. Gerhard, JSU softball undefeated in conference play so far, and we were just talking about, I went out and watched them Sunday. The energy around that team, it's electric. No wonder they're undefeated in conference play.
Yeah, it's a really amazing story to watch, and really if you just take maybe them and Auburn, you can make an argument they're the best two teams right now in the state of Alabama. Of course you have Alabama in there as well, but the way they're playing, the competition that they're playing, and the kind of dominance that they're playing with, and like you talked about, the loose, fun team chemistry that they've had so far this year, they're really fun to watch. And I mean, it's a team that's been tested by so many different good teams. And so they've played Alabamas, they've played the Missouris, they've played the Georgias, the teams that'll be in it late in the year. So when they come to OVC play, it's no question and no doubt why they're 17-0.
Like you mentioned, the tough schedule. Every coach wants to have that tough schedule because it helps you in the long run, and it has definitely helped them in the long run. They started out with Missouri, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, who are in the top 15 in the country, and here they are undefeated in conference play. But there's something about watching them.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. They all gel together.
Yeah.
Whitney Gillespie has had a heck of a season so far on the pitching circle. She's had a couple of no-hitters this season. It's just watching them it's one of the most fun teams to watch.
Yeah, it's really fun, and we talked about this off camera. I think one of the things that it reminds me of is the Golden State Warriors, just how loose they approach the game and how good they are once they get into the competition. And so you add those two things combined, and I think that what you get out of it is that you get a team that's talented and a team that's confident. And those are the most dangerous teams, especially in games where it's late, it's close, it's tight. Those are the teams that don't put added pressure on themselves, and they're able to make plays. And I think that's what's going to help them out as they move forward and as they look forward into the conference tournament coming up here in the next few weeks.
And here is JSU softball coach Jana McGinnis on her team chemistry.
You always hear in the athletic or coaches talk about chemistry, and chemistry, that is a very important part of it. It's not just skill. That's why this team's fun to coach, because they do have the team attitude. I think they put their teammates standing beside them first, and they enjoy seeing them succeed as much as them being successful, and they understand that we're in this together.
Staying with JSU, but moving over to the baseball field, another great season. They started off hot. They've lost a few, but they're still in second in the conference play. Yeah,
they're right now, like you said, number 2. They've only lost 2 conference games. They have a huge weekend coming up against Southeast Missouri. They're the number 1 team in the conference right now, just by virtue of the fact that they've played more games. They've also lost 2. They currently stand 16-2 in OVC play, and JSU, I think, is about 12-2. One of the fun things about Jacksonville State's baseball team right now is kind of like the softball team. They're doing it really a bunch of different ways. They don't have that one player that is dominating right now. Pascual Petrangolo was the guy that was coming into the season that was supposed to be the guy that was the All-American and put up the good numbers. He started off pretty slow, but everybody else really had his back early on. And with Coach Jim Case and this crew, I think they're, unlike the softball team who plays some of the best teams in the country to begin the season, what the JSU baseball team has done, they played a lot of good games, got a lot of good confidence underneath their belts early on. And I think that's what really helped them out. But a huge, huge weekend this weekend against Southeast Missouri.
And we'll be looking forward to checking that out. And, we've talked about this before, but JSU athletics this season, from football now to baseball and to softball, it's really been unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch because it's kind of a convergence of everything that's going on, and you're seeing this new energy, this added energy with Coach Gross taking on what Coach Clark started and taking that to a whole new level and playing for national championships. The softball team getting to where they're starting to play for conference championships, and then maybe a spot in the regionals. The baseball team might be doing the same. And all these teams are no stranger to where they are. And then you look at some of the peripheral sports like golf, who's doing pretty well, tennis, who's doing pretty well. Also, you have rifle, who's one of the best teams in the country, and they went to the national tournament this year. It's just, to me, I think that there's a certain energy around Jacksonville State sports and Jacksonville State athletics right now. It's a really good time to be a Gamecock fan. You add in the fact that Danny Willett ended up winning the Masters, and the fact that that they're getting a strong candidate to fill in the basketball position. There's a lot of other things moving forward that I think there's a lot to be really excited about if you're a JSU fan.
And I really urge y'all to go out and check out the softball team. I went this past weekend. It was a lot of fun. Hoping to catch the baseball here in a couple of weeks. But go out and support them because a lot of great things going on over at JSU. High school baseball going on right now. It's the playoffs. It's like the second part of the season, Gerhard, the high school playoffs. Let's take a look at the playoff pairings. The first round that will take place this week, and Ragland will host Wadley Thursday at 2 p.m. These will all be double headers the first day, and then the following day will be a, if necessary, game. But Meek will come to Donahoe. They won their area Friday at 2, and Jacksonville Christian will head to Decatur Heritage on Friday in Class 1A. In Class 2A, Fayetteville heads over to Randolph County. That will be Friday, and Ranburne goes to Vincent on Friday as well. In Class 3A, Ohatchee will go to Piedmont Friday at 5. That'll be a great game. And Pleasant Valley goes to Westbrook Christian. Those 4 teams right there, right here in our viewing area, Gerhard.
Yeah, these are really interesting matchups because these are teams that know each other really well. They've all played each other in either some kind of tournament. Ohatchee Piedmont, I think, is one of the more impressive ones because Piedmont has a really strong tradition of playing great baseball late in the year.
Yes.
And that's exactly what Ohatchee's doing right now. And they're playing hot right now, so that's a great first-round matchup over in Piedmont.
In Class 4A, here's some more of our local teams. Jacksonville goes to Cherokee County Friday, and Hokes Bluff goes to Cleburne County Tigers on Friday as well. In Class 5A, it's Moody coming to Alexandria, and in Class 6A, the Oxford Yellow Jackets, who've had a heck of a season so far, they host Briarwood Christian. And now let's move over to softball as we take a look at the Alabama Sports Writers Association Top 10. First in Class 1A, we got some local teams. There you see Coosa Christian at 6, Ragland at number 4, and Spring Garden comes in at number 2. Next up is Class 3A. We still got the Pleasant Valley Lady Raiders coming in at number 8. They clinched their area. They'll be hosting their area tournament next week. They clinched that on Tuesday of this week. Next up is Class 5A. And there you see, or Class 4A rather, Cleburne County comes in at number 5. And there we've talked about them before, the number 1 team in America, also the number 1 team in Alabama, the Curry High School there at number 1. And here is 5A, and there you see Moody at number 10, and Alexandria, the Calhoun County champions. They beat Oxford 3-2 the other night to win the Calhoun County championship in softball. They are number 5 in Class 5A. And in 6A, there you see the Oxford Yellow Jackets at number 2, and Southside Lady Panthers at number 1, Gerhard.
It's so funny because if you take a look at Class 6A alone, if you were going to just name the state championship game, and it won't work out like this because of the way that the tournament and the bracket works out, Southside is going to play Oxford, and that could be, for the champion for a spot in the championship game. It's going to be really interesting as softball goes through their playoffs and baseball goes through their playoffs, because the way baseball goes through their playoffs is 1 round by 1 round, 1 round by 1 round. So you have a 5-week, just like football.
Right.
Softball is a little bit different. Softball is you can get hot. It's like basketball where you play a regional, then super regional, and then you go to state. So just the dynamics of the playoffs alone really bring an interesting quality to this postseason.
We'll be looking forward to that and keep you updated with that as well. We're going to grab our first timeout. When we come back, we'll talk some college football. Stay with us here in the locker room. Back here in the locker room, in time to talk some college football. We talked about JSU and Auburn's spring games last week. Alabama having theirs this past Saturday. Alabama's always been known for their defense, and they really showed that in their A-Day game.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call it great defense or bad offense. You can go either way with this because the quarterbacks did not look good. Bo Scarborough didn't have the kind of game that people were thinking he was going to have. Damian Harris really showed up, though, as a running back for Alabama. But, yes, the defense will be, number 1, the key to what this team can be. And 2, I think that what you're starting to see is guys like Tim Williams and guys like Rashad Evans, these guys that were highly recruited and sought after. Those are the guys that I think will end up making the plays for this team. And take away the one touchdown you're seeing now from the Alabama offense. I think that the sky's the limit for this defense, and they could probably be as good, maybe even better than last year's D.
There's been some changes in Alabama. They've lost some people, got some new coaches. What What's your approach in the spring after all that?
The approach, I think, for Nick Saban is let's just do what we do and everybody else will conform to it. And from all intents and purposes and from everything that I saw, Jeremy Pruitt just fit right in like a glove. The defense got right back where it was supposed to be. Of course, the scheme is going to be different. The terminology is going to be different. But from just a doing it the Alabama way, for lack of a better term, that part seemed to me to still be there. And that might just be credit to Nick Saban and what he's created, and that he created the culture, and then everybody else falls in line with the culture because now everybody knows the expectations of what they have to do in order to get playing time or to get hired or whatever.
Right.
And so I think that the approach from the defensive side almost was as seamless from an outside perspective, as seamless as possible. And then now from the offensive side, I think that's when you get a little bit of what's going to happen here. But you have guys like O.J. Howard that came back, which I think was huge. And then you have Calvin Ridley back in the fold as well, Bo Scarborough and Damian Harris. I think those guys, the skill guys, will keep it up just enough to where the quarterback situation will end up working itself out.
You know, last week we saw Auburn, a lot of question marks. This week with Alabama, you know, it wasn't quite in sync. What does that show for both of these teams going into the regular season?
I think Auburn has a lot more questions and a lot more pivotal spots. There's more cause for concern with Auburn. And of course, it's easy to say after a national championship season.
Right.
It's just easy to say, well, they'll pick up, exactly where they left off. But I think that the concerns for Auburn are real because they don't have a quarterback and a quarterback-centric offense.
Right.
Alabama does not have a quarterback-centric offense. They have a run offense and a defense. We saw the defense. Now they need a running game. And if they can get it between Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough, maybe a combination of the two, we've seen that before. Richardson and Mark Ingram and Eddie Lacy. So I just think that what Alabama has is just figuring out who the guys will be going into it. Auburn's is, what are we going to be, and then who are those guys going to be filling in the spots. So that's the reason why the cause for concern for Auburn, I think, is much greater than Alabama's.
Well, here is Coach Nick Saban following the A-Day game on Saturday.
I don't think any conclusions can be drawn about anything that happened today other than the fact that this is an opportunity for us as coaches and as a team to look at where we are individually and collectively as a group, continue to evaluate, and use the rest of this offseason to focus on individual improvement for the players that we have so that they can go out there and execute with more consistency.
You know, I want to jump into Kirby Smart in Georgia in just a second. But one question about Kirby Smart's departure. He's been with Nick Saban ever since he got to Alabama.
Yeah.
How is Saban going to adjust without having Kirby?
It's going to be really, really interesting because these two not only are coaching comrades, whatever you want to call them, but they're also friends. They're also really, really good friends. And I think that the defense will see an adjustment. But the great thing about hiring a guy like Jeremy Pruitt is that he was in the fold as well from a support staff position, then got on the field, and then had success at Florida State and Georgia. Now you have a situation where Kirby Smart is out of there. I just think that you won't have that interpersonal, that high five and always have your back, always have. I think you'll get a sense of that with Jeremy Pruitt. It'll just be different. And I think that Nick Saban, just like maybe with Will Muschamp, will literally have somebody he's rooting for unless they're not playing it, obviously when Alabama and Georgia play each other. But that's going to be a guy he literally roots for on a personal level moving forward.
Well, we saw Georgia's spring game this week and Kirby Smart. I saw something at Georgia. You know, Georgia's always been a football school. They've got, 10-win seasons every year. But the electricity in that stadium Saturday was unbelievable.
Yeah, and they needed that. And this is the reason why they fired Mark Richt. And it wasn't because Mark Richt's not a good coach. He's a very good coach. And I think that he's a coach that could have done a lot of great things. And if a couple things would have changed in that 2012 season and they won a national championship, he might still be there. But what Georgia sees out of Kirby Smart is what a lot of Alabama fans saw Nick Saban in that first year he was there.
Right.
A lot of energy, and he's a guy who comes to Athens with multiple championship rings on his finger and experience with the best coach in sports right now, and to a large extent. So all those things combined, I think that Saturday was the reason why we saw what we saw out of Georgia's from a fan perspective, because we're seeing the energy that Kirby Smart has and the kind of team that they'll lay out. I think what Georgia sees is they see a mini Alabama that can recruit just as well as Alabama. And so there's a lot of things to be excited about. And, of course, you have the number one quarterback in the country that's coming in. And I just think that right now there's that same palpable energy we saw in 2007 in Tuscaloosa we're seeing in 2016 in Athens.
It'll be definitely interesting to see Kirby Smart over at Georgia. Shifting over to baseball, the Braves, rough start for them.
Oh, yeah.
Rough start.
Yeah.
But 4-game win streak, looking to carry that on.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from the Atlanta Braves?
I didn't see that their start was as bad as they were because they started out horrendous 0-9. They finally got their first win late last week on Friday. They weren't that bad. They weren't 0-9 bad.
Right.
But I don't think that this 4-game win streak is kind of who they are moving forward.
Right.
Because I don't think they can beat the teams in the upper echelon. They have no business even trying to compete with the Cubs and some of the teams that will be in it late in the year. But I think that they have something solid to build on. And so if Braves fans could just realize that, this is going to be a rebuilding process. This is all a rebuilding process. Then I think that they can manage their expectations to be where they need them to be. Now they just need to get, number one, healthy, 2, develop some of the younger guys, and 3, get out of trouble. You saw Hector Olivera, a guy they were expecting to perform big now. He's suspended now because of the trouble that he's got into. So don't take the 4-game win streak as something to be super elated about, because I don't think these things last. But don't take the 0-9 start as who this Braves team is. Who this Braves team, this team will be. They're somewhere in the middle, I believe.
All right, we'll keep you updated with the Braves as well. We're going to grab another timeout. When we come back, it's the Locker Room Roundtable. Stay with us. And back here in the locker room, it is time for the Locker Room Roundtable. Last week, Gerhard, we saw Kobe Bryant's final game, his farewell, put up 60 points, couldn't ask for a better way to go out. And, he got a lot of coverage. This was a huge deal. It was Kobe's farewell. Everybody was there. Tickets were $13,000. Will we ever see another athlete in any sport get this same kind of treatment and farewell?
I don't think so. It's just so hard to imagine. Maybe Tom Brady, but there's so much hate for Tom Brady. There's a lot of hate for Kobe, too. Maybe when Dale Earnhardt Jr. says it is his last season, he has a kind of a run that Jeff Gordon has. We might see this out at different tracks around the country. But it was unbelievable to watch.
Yeah.
Not only the coverage leading into the game, and a lot of that's a product of ESPN just driving, the game to try to drive the ratings. And this is what the Lakers have been building for. The Lakers knew they would, excuse my language, they would suck. They knew that it would be terrible. What they also knew is that they could just drive the Kobe narrative for as much and as long as they needed to. Get this last chance to see Kobe. Get this last chance to see Kobe. And then he delivered. 60 points in the game. Yeah, he shot 50 times. Let's not, he took the most shots in the NBA, which is also kind of fitting for him as well.
Right.
But he gave the performance that people wanted to see. And very few times you will see fans walk out of an arena for a team that is not going to the playoffs, barely beat an average to below average team, and the kind of season that they've had so far, and leave smiling and high-fiving. That's what Kobe had. That's what Kobe gave them. So it'll be hard to imagine, because even guys like Derek Jeter, he went out celebrated, but he didn't go out like this. Chipper Jones went out celebrated, but he didn't go out like this. I just think that there was a convergence of a lot of things, and really building up towards the beginning of the year when they first started to set this thing in motion, who the Lakers were going to be, and setting aside that this is the last chance to see greatness.
And moving over to baseball now, about another player, Bryce Harper. Is he the best in baseball right now?
Without a doubt. I mean, he is just a monster. And the thing about him that is so fun, we just talked about this off camera, is that he's the kind of guy that as soon as he comes up to the plate, he's now must-see television. He's now stop what you're doing and watch us at bat, because you don't know what's going to happen. He could just get a line drive to first, get on first base, and then in a minute and a half be on third, because he can steal. He plays the game with aggressiveness. He plays the game with fury, with a passion that rubs some people the wrong way. We've heard guys, the older school guys like Goose Gossage and others, come out and say, he's too flamboyant for the game, but he'll do, amazing things on the field. He'll hit home runs. I think he's great for baseball. Right now, 7 home runs, 20 RBI, batting over 300 at 333. He's a dominating force for a very good team. And I think that's the number 2 thing, is that he plays for a very good team, the Washington Nationals. I think if he was playing for a terrible team, it'd be a little bit different story, but he's playing for a good team, so he's fun to watch. And sorry for Braves fans, they got to share a division with that guy.
You know, if he keeps this up for most of his career, where will that put him in the rankings of baseball and among the greats?
I think that he has the kind of talent, and he's been in the league long enough. I mean, to think about it, he's already hit over 100 career home runs. I mean, he's south of 25. He could be up there with the greatest to ever play. He can get 3,000 hits. He can get 600 home runs. These things are not out of the realm of possibility.
Right.
He's got to stay, number one, healthy. And with the kind of ball that he plays and the aggressiveness that he plays with, that's the number one thing that you look out for. So his talent and his potential, way up there with the greatest of all time. We'll see how it all plays out, but so far he's off to a great start.
You know, we've been talking about some rule changes in the NCAA, satellite camps, and those type of things. They came out with another one, which allows schools to pay parents to accompany recruits on official visits.
Right.
What kind of rule is this for the NCAA?
It's weird to say now, but it can get kind of murky just because they're allowing the people that make the influences on the decisions away from the school to now join the kids at the school. And usually when the kids are at the school, that's when they had their chance to soak in all of the things that they make that make them more comfortable with the school. At the end of the day, it's the player's decision about whether he wants to go to that school or not. I just think adding those extra influences doesn't necessarily hurt, but I don't think it does a great job in helping.
Right.
And then it now becomes an arm race between the schools of, hey, are you going to pay this 4-star athlete? Are you going to pay his parents and his parents' or whatever to get in? It's murky, number one, but I think that at the end of the day, it'll still work out to where the schools that get the top talented kids will still get those kids.
The NFL draft is coming up soon. I know the Browns got the number 2 pick now. A lot of quarterbacks in the mix, and that's what they need. But one of those being the ones that JSU played in the national championship, and that's Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and JSU fans got a great chance to see a very good quarterback. And whenever JSU lost the national championship game, and he had the game that he did, people then wondered or stopped wondering why people were seeing him as a first-round draft pick.
Right.
Now he might be the overall draft pick because of the way that teams have traded and moved to get the picks that they have, the Rams and the Eagles making the moves that they have. I think that Carson Wentz, number one, showed everybody who he was in that championship game because he came off, like we talked about, before then, as we did the show back in December and in January. He didn't play for 8 weeks, then had the performance that he had in the championship game. He has what it takes to be a number one Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning kind of player. And I think now people will have a lot more broader respect for 1AA football because he'll be either, I think, the number 1 or the number 2 pick. And it's just kind of cool that JSU got to see him, up close and personal because he's the kind of guy that can go to the next level and kind of show the barometer of how far 1AA football is away from the FBS.
He was really impressive quarterback
for sure
back in that national championship game. Thanks for joining us on this week's show. If you want to catch it again, there's several more times. Of course, those 3 times on Thursdays, 7:30 a.m., 4:30, and 8:30, and on Fridays at 6:30 a.m. and 6 p.m., and always on TV24.tv under the on-demand section, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Join us next week. It's race weekend next weekend, and we're going to preview the race, the Geico 500, and all the racing activities right here on The Locker Room next week. Join us then. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.